Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So in today's video, I have another author guide for you, and this time I'm going to be talking about Beverly Jenkins. So I did another video like this in the past, and the other author that I highlighted was Lorraine Heath, and so I will attach the link to that video in the description of this one if you wanted to check that out. But I thought these bookshelf tours were kind of a fun way to highlight some of my favorite authors and the ones that I collect all of their books for. So I have been reading Beverly Jenkins books for 3 years or so now. I love her books so much. I've read most of them, and there's only a couple I haven't read yet that I will chat about when I start the little reviews for each of these. So what I like to do for these videos is break down the series and then each book within the series. So Beverly Jenkins is a little bit different. She doesn't do a ton of series, but she does have some in there. But most of her books, actually all but I believe one of her historical romances, they all exist within the same world. I feel like you can really start anywhere with her books. You won't feel that lost. She does have like characters that, you will see mentioned from other books and stuff like that, but you won't be missing out on some of their background if you haven't read all of the books in order. And Beverly has mentioned before that all but I believe one of her historical romance books exist in the same world, the same universe. Even going into her contemporary series, the Blessings series, the characters in those are even related to the characters from her historical romance series, which I think is super fun. And so in this video, I'm only going to be breaking down her historical romances. I haven't jumped into her contemporary, more like romantic suspense books or the Blessings series. I haven't gotten into those. One thing I love about Beverly Jenkins books is how she's able to blend romance and history so well. She definitely includes those slice of life moments in her books that really make you feel a part of the town and community. You get to know the characters so well. I think her books would make amazing adaptations like TV series or movies. I would love to see that one day. And I just love how she always has strong, independent, very sassy heroines and the flirty heroes who fall at the knees for them. So without further ado, we will jump into it. So first up is her most current series, which is the Women Who Dare series, and book 1 is Rebel. So this is the cover for that one. I love this cover. So Rebel has a New Orleans setting. It is post-Civil War. The heroine is a teacher, and the hero is part of the Levesque family, which makes multiple appearances within Beverly Jenkins books. And in this one, we have a very flirty, swoony hero. The second book in the Women Who Dare series is Wild Rain. This is one of my favorites. I love the gorgeous sunset there on the cover and the horse down there as well. So the heroine for Wild Rain, her name is Spring, and we actually meet her in her brother's book, Tempest, which I will be talking about later on. So in this one, we have a very self-sufficient, competent heroine. She runs her own ranch. The hero ends up falling for her from day one, and he's a reporter in town to do a story about her brother, and this one is set in Wyoming. And then Beverly's most recent book, this is To Catch a Raven. It just came out in the end of August. This is the third book in the Women Who Dare series. In this, we have a fearless grifter heroine who goes undercover to reclaim the stolen Declaration of Independence. The heroine was born into a family of grifters, counterfeiters, gamblers, swindlers, and imposters, and couldn't be prouder of her family history until, of course, she has to help the government. So she ends up going undercover as a housekeeper to the man suspected of stealing the Declaration of Independence, and gets partnered up with the hero who has to pose as the valet and the driver as well as her husband. In this one, we get very extensive family history for both the hero and the heroine. We also learn that the hero's father, who was an art forger in the past, he has a second chance little side romance in here with the heroine's mother, which was really sweet to see. While the plot sounds super complicated, this one was actually really heavy on the romance and steam, which I mean, love to see it. There's ties in here to the Levesque family. There's distant ties to Pilar's family from Destiny's Captive, and then a character in here from Winds of the Storm as well. And so there is the Women Who Dare series. Next up is the Destiny series, and the first book is Destiny's Embrace. In this one, the hero is a ranch owner in California. The heroine ends up becoming the housekeeper at his family's house. There is lots of bickering and sexual tension, and then we meet the entire Yates family, which this series follows. Destiny's Surrender. I love this cover. I love the purple gown on Billy the heroine. This was my first Beverly Jenkins read and what made me want to read all of her series, so it's definitely a favorite of mine and one I definitely recommend. One thing very common with Beverly Jenkins books is she has super strong heroines, and Billy, the unconventional badass heroine of this book, is no exception. I love how she stands up for herself. She takes no crap from anybody. She calls it how it is, defends her own life. She's just a really strong, fierce single mom. So in this one, Billy is a working lady of the night, and the hero is one of her regulars. She's been his favorite for years. He, treats her to gifts and presents and all of that. And one day she ends up discovering she's pregnant, and with some other circumstances going on as well, it turns her life upside down and she ends up fleeing. So Billy is able to track down the hero Drew, and she wants his help and protection for their son. Drew is definitely flabbergasted by the entire situation when she shows up at his family's ranch. He had looked for her in the past after she disappeared, and when he couldn't find her, he had kind of tried to move on with his life, but now Billy is back. They have a son, and the story unfolds from there. The third book in the Destiny series is Destiny's Captive. I love the ship in there in the background of that one. And this one is actually a bit of a pirate romance. This one has a great meet cute moment. The heroine ends up tying up the hero. She steals his ship. He then wants revenge and his ship back, and that's how they end up meeting. The heroine is super proud to be from a family of Cuban pirates, thieves, and smugglers. And then the hero himself, he went through a horrible few years in his past. He was actually stolen and forced to work on ships. So he definitely has some horrible memories and facial scars as well from some of his time. He does end up tracking down the heroine. He learns his ship sank while she had it. And then they end up having a sword fighting moment, which at the end they end up finding themselves getting married. So these two travel together from Cuba to Florida and then across the United States to get to his family's ranch in California. I loved seeing their travels together and their chemistry. They both have that shared love of ships and the sea. And then there's even a side romance for the Yates family mom throughout the entire series. And so we get to see that culminate in this book. And that is the Destiny series. Next up is the Old West or the Rhine family series. And the first book in that one is Forbidden. This book is very slow burn. It has the heroine's journey across the Midwest to get to California. She ends up being saved from the hero and wakes up in Nevada where she's recovering. She wants to open her own restaurant. She has so many amazing business ideas in all of the cooking. I really loved the heroine in this one. I ended up making the orange marmalade that she does in the book after I read this book because it just sounded so good. The hero in this one is a local business owner who has been living his life as a white passing man. So when he knows he wants to marry the heroine, he also knows that he's going to have to share, with the community of who he really is. So yeah, I really loved this one, and that is Forbidden. Breathless is book 2 in the Old West / Rhine family series. In this one, the heroine is the niece of the heroine of book 1. I just love this family so much. The heroine works as an accountant and a manager of one of the finest hotels in the Arizona territory. Her and her sister had a rough, complicated childhood, so she is just really enjoying the stable life and the respectable life that she has right now. And when the story starts, she's just determined not to get involved with the wrong man. She's put off marrying, but then a handsome drifter from her past arrives in town. So the hero in this has spent time traveling through the West, and he has really learned the value of a place to settle down and, knows he wants that home life. So he's convinced that his settling down days are going to be with his Duchess, which is what he affectionately calls the heroine. We have a very flirty hero in this one. He's determined to show the heroine how much he wants her in his life, forever. This is just a really sweet romance, low angst. There are also conversations in here about women's voting rights happening at the time, and we get to see how women of color get behind this movement as well. So yeah, that is Breathless. Next up is Tempest, the final book in the Old West / Rhine family series. The heroine in this is the other niece of the heroine of book 1 and the sister of the heroine of book 2. And in this one, the heroine becomes a mail order bride as she travels to Wyoming to meet and marry a doctor. And the hero in this one, his sister also has a book, which is Wild Rain. So the hero and the heroine met when they were exchanging letters. The hero lost his wife during childbirth like 6 years ago when the story starts, and he knows he wants a good mother figure in his daughter's life. So after accepting his proposal, while they're, exchanging letters, the heroine decides to travel to meet him, and then they have a great meet cute moment, which is her accidentally shooting him when her carriage is being shot at by outlaws on her journey to him. And so upon him first meeting her during all of that, he realizes how little he knows about her, about women in general, and he becomes a little wary about his bride-to-be, but he decides he still wants, a marriage of convenience with her because he does want a mother for his daughter. And he quickly realizes he can't keep his eyes or hands off of her, and then of course starts to fall for the heroine. I love the heroine in this one. She jumps right into house chores and kind of blows the hero's mind over how a proper lady, quote unquote, should act. She's an heiress with quite the chunk of change, and she just takes no crap from the local banker, the grocery owner, and the mayor over how to handle her finances, because of course they all have an opinion about that. The heroine in this one is just a powerhouse and brought so much change for the good, of course, to the hero's life. So that is the Old West or the Rhine family series. Next up is the Grayson family series, and book one is Vivid. I have the hardcover of this book. I've been wanting to find the mass market paperback, but this is all I have found so far, so the hunt is still on for my copy of that. This is one of my favorite Beverly Jenkins books, so I definitely couldn't pass up this hardcover though. So in this one, the heroine is Dr. Vivica Lancaster, but she goes by Vivid, and she's very frustrated by the limits placed on female physicians of color at the time. So when she's offered the chance to set up a practice in a small Black community in Michigan, she ends up leaving her California home and heading east. So when she shows up, she realizes the hero was assuming she was a man the whole time. His aunt is actually the one who hired her and didn't give the hero any details about who she was. So he is shocked by that when she shows up. The hero's grandfather actually settled the community, and so now the hero owns the land, the general store, the bank in town, as well as being the sheriff and mayor, so he is very busy. He was also in a horrible marriage in the past, which left a bad taste for like city women in his mind, so he is convinced the heroine is not going to want to stay in this small town. We get to see lots of medical adventures in here with the locals. The heroine also moves into the former doctor's house, which is right behind the hero and his daughter, so we get that close proximity. We also meet Jewel, the heroine of the next book, and her family. We get to see the relationship that the hero and the community have with the local indigenous people. The hero also has some nightmares from war, so we get to see that handled. We also get to see Galen and Hester, which is the couple from Indigo, and it is like 20 years later from their book, so we get to see them married for 20 years at this point in this book. That is the original cover for Vivid, and then recently the Last Chapter bookshop did a historical romance box, and so I have this special edition of Vivid as well. So I love the greens on that cover, and then it has a signed book plate from Beverly Jenkins as well. Next up in the Grayson family series is Jewel. This one I still need to read it, but basically the hero and heroine are friends, and then he ends up needing her help to pose as his wife so he can win over an investor in his newspaper. The whole town hears about it and assumes they are married. And then, of course, if it's not true, her reputation will be ruined. So they end up entering into a marriage of convenience, which neither of them wants, at first. So that is the Grayson family series. Next up is the Levesque family series, with book one being Through the Storm. This book starts off in Georgia. The heroine is actually enslaved when the story starts. She ends up escaping, but right before that, her aunt had told her that she descends from African queens and tells her kind of the fate and prophecy of her and her family. After she escapes, the heroine is taken to a refugee-style war camp where she actually meets Harriet Tubman, and that is where she also meets the hero of the book. And the hero in this, he is from the Levesque family. The hero and heroine, they both fall really hard and fast for one another. He wants her for his mistress. She doesn't want to be tied down to a man, so they kind of butt heads over that. The hero is definitely a possessive alpha hero, which I love. While at this war camp, we get to see the heroine helping the doctors around there, and we see more of the gory side of things. So she's assisting with amputations, she's staunching wounds, she provides a lot of care for the injured soldiers there. But after a bit, the heroine ends up stealing from money from the hero and kind of runs off. Later, she ends up kind of coincidentally running into the Levesque family matriarch and the hero's brothers. And without knowing their history, the mom kind of arranges a marriage for the heroine and her son, which is the hero of this book. So we also get to see some characters from Indigo in here, as well as the heroine of this book. Her brother's book is Forbidden, and he makes an appearance in this book. Winds of the Storm is the second book in the Levesque family series. In this one, the hero is part of the Levesque family, and he owes his life to the woman who rescued him during the height of Civil War, but she's known only as the Butterfly. The heroine in this is a former spy, and she's asked to go on one last mission to pose as an infamous madam in New Orleans, and she's supposed to gather information to ensure the safety of the South's freedom. So that is their romance. This is one I still need to read, but I really love the colors of the flowers in this one. The third book in the Levesque family series is Capture. This is one of my all-time favorite covers, and I can't wait to read this one. The front of the cover kind of has that zoomed in look, but then on the back we get to see the full picture, which I love that sailing moment. So this one is high stakes adventure on the high seas, with the heroine is actually a young slave, and then the hero is a roguish privateer. So in this, the hero is a rebel captain, and he's one of the Levesque family, of course. He ends up overtaking a British ship and discovers the stunning heroine being kept as a slave on board. So he ends up offering her freedom in exchange for a forbidden, pleasure-filled night together in his bed. And so yeah, I'm sure their romance takes off from there. This is one I can't wait to read super soon. So that is the Levesque family series. Next up is Nighthawk. I love this cover. I actually listened to an interview with Beverly Jenkins, and she mentioned that this is her favorite cover of her books as well. She shared the story of when she was doing like a cover reveal for this, like within her own readers group back in the day. Her readers just went wild for the cover, which I mean, I think we can see why. And so it became one of her favorites as well. So in this one, we have a sassy heroine prisoner and then the toughened lawman tasked with having to bring her in. And this, the hero's beloved wife, she was murdered in the past. And so he knew he'd never love again. Instead, he became like a hardened bounty hunter and made it his mission to help bring others to justice. The heroine in this, she was orphaned at age 12 and she's always kind of just taken care of herself, gotten herself out of trouble, and now she has like a mob on her back that she has to finally, you know, kind of accept help from the hero for the first time in her life. I love the hero in this one. He is gone for the heroine from the moment he meets her, and like even he can't understand or believe it himself because he thought love was over for him. In this book, we have an age gap. The hero is 38 and the heroine is 25. The hero spent the first 20 years of his life in Scotland and now he is in Wyoming, and we follow the heroine from Kansas to Wyoming, and then her and the heroes adventure together along the way when he's supposed to turn her over to authorities. This one is just super fun and lots of chemistry. This is Night Song, which was Beverly Jenkins' first published book. My used copy here has a scratch right on the hero's cheek, which is very annoying. I definitely want the original cover of this one, which I will share up here. I think everybody's searching for that book, but one day I'll have it. So in this one, the story centers around the Black migration to the West following the Civil War and focuses a lot on the 9th and 10th Cavalry, which were the Buffalo Soldiers. The heroine in this is a school teacher in Kansas, and after her grandfather, who was her last living relative, was killed in front of her when she was just a child in Georgia, she's had to look after herself her whole life. The hero ends up arriving in town with his troops and notices the heroine right away. They actually had a like little meet cute moment 2 years in the past for a brief moment. It left lasting impressions on both of them. The hero in this is so into the heroine like immediately, and while it comes off a bit insta-lovey, I actually really believed in them and was on board because of the chemistry and the passion between them. The heroine definitely tries to distance herself at first, her reputation around town, and then her teaching job is on the line, you know, if she's caught flirting with a soldier. So that is Night Song. Next up is Indigo, and I am so glad I have this gorgeous cover on my shelves. I searched a long time for this book and couldn't believe my luck when I actually found one. This one, the heroine works as a conductor for Michigan's Underground Railroad. At the beginning of the story, the hero is brought to her when he's injured, and she finds out that he's a great conductor as well, known as the Black Daniel, and he's a member of the North's Underground Railroad network, just like she is. So I love Hester, the heroine in this book. She is fantastic. She has overcome so much in her life, and she really isn't willing to settle for less than she deserves, which was amazing to see. I loved the caretaking at the beginning of the story, and seeing both her and Galen, the hero, you know, falling for one another was just everything. This is a very swoony romance. So that is Indigo, and of course the very gorgeous cover. It doesn't want to focus on them. There we go. Wild Sweet Love. This is one I still need to read. I love this cover. In this one, the heroine is an outlaw bank robber fresh out of jail on parole, and she's forced to live with another woman who is supposed to teach her manners and kind of, you know, quote unquote ladylike ways. The heroine, you know, gains some knowledge from that, but she definitely stays true to who she is, which is nice to see. And the hero in this, he is an ex-gambler turned banker, and he's actually the son of the woman that the heroine has to live with. And he and his mother both just embrace the heroine for who she is. So yeah, definitely gotta love a heroine who's the outlaw bank robber. In this, the heroine, her brother has a book as well, which he is the hero of Something Like Love, which I'll be talking about soon. Midnight. This one is set in Boston. The heroine is the daughter of a tavern owner, but becomes the notorious spy known as Lady Midnight. And then the hero in this is a worldly adventurer seeking revenge for the death of his father. So he actually comes to town and suspects that the heroine's father is the one involved with the death of his father. But of course, once he meets the heroine, he is swept up by her instead. This is one I still need to read, but I really love this quiet, very sensual moment between the hero and the heroine on the cover. Next up is Before the Dawn. This is actually one of the last ones that I need to read to be caught up on Beverly Jenkins' historical backlist. So in this one, the heroine ends up marrying the man who loved her mother on his deathbed, and, you know, just so she can be provided for once that man dies. After his death, she has to settle some things with his estranged sons, and she travels from Boston to the Colorado Rockies. The eldest son of that man ends up becoming the hero, and he's definitely not happy that the heroine will possibly inherit his considerable wealth, and definitely assumes the worst about her marriage to his father on his deathbed. So yeah, we got a hate to love situation or setup in this one. Next up is this gorgeous cover, which is Topaz. I love this moment between the hero and the heroine. So this one takes place in Chicago. The heroine is actually an ambitious newspaper reporter who is on the trail of a railroad stock swindler, which has been selling counterfeit stocks and kind of preying on elderly Black people. So she wants to put a stop to that. When the story starts, she is following who she thinks is guilty when she gets herself into a little situation and needs to be rescued. And then that rescue kind of comes in the form of an arranged marriage due to her father. So in this, the heroine's father, he actually stole some cows and then sold them. So instead of being sent to jail, he made a deal with the hero, who was the owner of the cows, and offers up his daughter for marriage instead. Hero in this is a mustached deputy marshal hero. They end up getting married at a brothel of all places, and then he wants to quickly return home after that to Indian Territory, which is current day Oklahoma. So right after their wedding, they end up joining a mail order bride wagon train caravan situation that's heading west. That mail order bride caravan we actually see featured in lots of Beverly's books that are coming up that I'm going to be talking about. So we see lots of characters in here. We see characters from Always and Forever, as well as A Chance at Love as well, two of my favorite books from her. So after the hero and the heroine travel with the caravan for 40 days, they split and then head to his home. The heroine fits into town right away, and after a week, she ends up actually getting herself into trouble. She gets arrested with other local women when the local newspaper won't hire her. So her and the other women end up protesting outside of businesses who also won't hire women. Something like love. In this one, we have an outlaw hero, and the heroine is the mayor of the town. So in this one, the heroine is very successful, and she's an educated business owner as well. She is like a dressmaker and a seamstress and owns her own shop. And so when the story starts in this one, her father arranges a marriage for her with a much older man that only wants her money. So she ends up fleeing Chicago and takes off to Kansas. So on her journey there, her train is actually robbed by some infamous train robbers. One of the men she is really taken with, and they had like a little flirty moment before him and his friends robbed the train. After the robbery, she settles into Kansas, gets her business going, becomes successful. She becomes very popular there and ends up becoming the mayor of the town. Well, then one day, the hero, who was one of those train robbers, he shows up in town, and it is their romance. There are discussions in here about Jim Crow, the history of Black and Indigenous people during the times. They also talk about Indigenous children's schooling conditions, and then women's roles in their towns and kind of politics at the time. We get to see characters in here from tons of other Beverly Jenkins books. So there are characters from A Night Song, Always and Forever, and then of course Wild Sweet Love, which is Hero's sister's book. This is A Chance at Love. I love this cover moment with her leg hitched out and kind of the ruffles on her dress. So in this, the heroine travels with a mail order bride wagon train to Kansas, ends up getting stopped by twin girls who want to find their uncle a new wife so that they can have a new mom. So the heroine ends up returning the twins home, where she meets the hero who is looking after them. He is a hog farmer who has been wanting to find a wife to raise his sister's twin girls with him, and he's very much taken with the heroine right away, just like the girls are, and asks if she'll, stay and live with them for a year, be a mom to the girls while he searches for a wife. I love the heroine in this one. She is a gambler. She's a self-made, wealthy heroine, and she's just one of my all-time favorite Beverly heroines. She definitely takes control of her life, her finances, and her sexuality as well. The hero had very little experience in the bedroom when the heroine meets him, and he even thought that only men could experience pleasure, which, of course he learned that from another man. So I love how in this book, after their first and very, very brief encounter, she talks to him about the ways of pleasuring a woman and kind of sets him on the right path moving forward. I loved their romance together, and then of course her teaching the girls how to take care of themselves as well, whether it's from, knowing how to ride a horse or how to take care of their own finances as well, and just to kind of, never rely on a man. So yeah, that is A Chance at Love. Next up is Always and Forever. This one starts off in Chicago. The heroine has been running her late father's bank while living with her two aunts, and then she's recently been jilted at the altar, so she's just kind of done with men and all of their nonsense. And she gets a letter one day in the mail from her cousin, who writes from Kansas saying that their town is booming, but in desperate need of 30 to 35 marrying-minded women for the men who live there. Her cousin wants the heroine to be the leader of the mail order bride wagon train. So the heroine decides to go ahead and do that, but she needs a man to accompany her on the trip. So that is the hero who comes in and joins, and they have all of the chemistry right from the start. They're both very stubborn and we just get to see like their great adventure from Chicago to Kansas. And then many of Beverly's other books, we get to see them on this journey as well. So the heroine from A Chance at Love, we get to see her in this book as well. Next up is The Taming of Jessie Rose. So in this one, the hero is out of jail from train robbing and kind of the mayhem from that, and he gets tasked with a trip to Texas to find another outlaw, and he ends up meeting the heroine and having to work together with her. So in this, we have a very flirty hero. We get amazing chemistry, lots of hot times between the hero and the heroine. The heroine is actually older than the hero. She's 36 and he's 22, which I love to see. This one, the heroine's sister actually died during childbirth, so the heroine picked up her life. She was in New York as a teacher, and so she decided to come home to Texas to take care of her nephew after her sister's death. The heroine of this has a lot going on from her past, so she had a severe case of measles when she was young, which left her sterile and unable to have children of her own. And then she was also widowed as well, but like her marriage was a marriage of convenience situation. Her husband had needed a wife for his career, and then the heroine needed a husband to keep her job because where she worked at in New York, the school board kind of frowned upon like an unmarried woman teaching. And then the hero was that train robber. And we get to see some heroes from the other books as well that were kind of his friends or who he worked with. So we get to see the heroes from Topaz, Nighthawk, and Something Like Love in this one. So those are all my Beverly Jenkins historical romances and kind of the breakdown of each of those. If you ever want to see my full reviews or like more of my thoughts on any of these books, I of course have my Goodreads linked in all of my videos, which you can find in the description of this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books that I talked about, or maybe what your favorite Beverly Jenkins book is, or where you'd want to start based on the descriptions I gave for any of these. I love doing these little author bookshelf spotlight highlights. Like I mentioned, I did the one for Lorraine Heath, and then now this one for Beverly Jenkins. I definitely have more of these videos planned in the future for other authors I want to highlight and talk about their books and their historical romances. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for me of which ones you'd like to see me talk about. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.